Donald Trump delivered a rare speech during this transitionary period of time, and it was at something called the Fox Nation or Fox News Patriot Awards. Now, I want you to imagine as we go through this, we'll get to some really frightening moments from Trump, but just the broader event that this was. I want you to imagine that CNN or MSNBC held an event where they gave Biden the honorary Patriot of the Year award, and what MAGA would say about that. Trump called on CBS to have their ability to do their broadcast removed because he thought that 60 Minutes edited an interview, as they do with every interview, in a way that was advantageous to Vice President Harris. So he said, go after CBS for that. They're so biased, election interference. That was his argument. But when the most watched cable news network does an event where they give him the Patriot of the Year award, that's apparently not inappropriate bias politically. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. As ridiculous as some of the stuff that he said during this speech. The first should really scare the world. It should scare consumers. We'll talk about the impact of this today and over the coming days and weeks, I'm sure. But he says the tariffs that he announced on Canada, Mexico, and China are just the beginning.
With Canada, and Justin came flying right in because we talked about 25% tariffs. That's just the beginning. This is a hell of a nice crowd. I like this guy. This is a nice crowd. A lot of people thought we're going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to get your prices down. And we're bringing the cost down. You know, when we were campaigning, a lot of people thought the biggest thing was the economy, and it is. It probably polled the best, but I never believed it was as important as immigration and the border and stopping our country from being invaded, because this was a massive invasion of our country.
While you're watching this, we have many more clips, but please do click the subscribe button if you appreciate the work this show does. He says it's just the beginning. So 25% tariffs across the board on all imports from Canada and Mexico, our two largest trading partners, and then an additional 10% tariffs across the board on all Chinese imports. A tax on U.S. companies that gets passed down to U.S. consumers, and one that is so broad and expansive that its impact would not be what Trump says, which is you snap your fingers, jobs come back, prices go down. I don't know how he economically thinks that works. And Mexico and Canada and China just do whatever we want on everything, and they pay the taxes to us in a way that is incomprehensible. But instead, he's preemptively launching us into a trade war with those countries, saying that after meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he's still planning on going further than that. So what he already did, that economists are going, get ready. Companies are pre-buying a bunch of inventory, getting ready for this massive hike in prices. But he's saying we'll go further than that. It's just the beginning. So whenever he then goes on, it's so contradictory to then go on and say, immigration, but also I'm going to bring prices down. How? By spiking them? That doesn't make any sense. There's no debate from any rational observers that Trump's proposed tariff plan, if he goes through on it, he might chicken out, but if he goes through, would spike prices for us and would be a massive tax on the working class. And that's his solution to high prices for the working class. Oh no. What are we getting into? Well, we know what we're getting into. We tried to warn America. They didn't listen. Then you have this moment where he hints at changes to our elections that are frightening.
They tried, and then they just dropped their placards and went home. They said, this is a slaughter. And but we're gonna do things that have been really needed for a long time, and we are going to look at elections. We want to have paper ballots, one-day voting, voter ID, and proof of citizenship, a little thing like proofs of, and we have a hard...
Can someone explain to me, even by their logic, so we don't have any voter fraud of note, right? When the little instances, as happens with every election, happen, hold those people accountable. But there's no conspiracy by the Democrats. There's no outcome determinative voter fraud. There's no widespread voter fraud. So, but even if we accept the premise that that's an issue that needs immediate action, how is making everyone vote on one day going to minimize the fraud? I don't really, the logic there doesn't hold. Even if people are voting on other days, the mechanisms that we've implemented to ensure the voter security should hold, no? And why would you want just one day when people's lives are complicated and this is a right that we want a bunch of people to exercise? Oh, wait, Republicans don't, because often massive voter turnout hurts them. Because as I've argued before, if we had much higher voter turnout, if we got a better pulse, a better sense of the actual pulse of our country, it does skew in the Democratic direction, which is why Republicans, even by this narrow margin, were freaking out that Trump won the popular vote. Because Republicans really struggle to do that because they don't actually have majority support. Even Trump winning the popular vote, he didn't get a majority, he got a plurality. But it's just him not letting go of his own conspiracies that now most of his followers have even abandoned, because they're saying, oh, Trump, now that Trump won, we're going to pretend like we weren't screaming that our elections were completely rigged for the last few years. Ridiculousness on top of ridiculousness. And then we'll check in on this part of the speech.
Bring prices down. We're going to make our country safe. We're going to stop people from robbing our stores and hurting our people. We're going to, and we'll get involved with governors, including Democrat governors, because that's unfortunately, whether you like it or not, that's where the crime is. It's in virtually every case, it's with Democrat-run cities and states, and we're going to stop it. We're going to work with the governors and the mayors, even if they're Democrats, and we're going to get it down, and we're going to bring our country back, and it's going to be bigger and better and stronger than ever before. And we're going to be proud of our country again. Right now, we're not so proud of our country. We're going to be very proud of our country again. It's going to be better than ever before. It's going to be more successful than ever before. We're going to be more respected throughout the world than ever before.
Okay, so you get the point on that. He brought up crime, and as I'm sure you all are aware, we've launched a new show, a weekly podcast that gets uploaded on the channel called The Grudge, and it's an extreme right-winger Isabella Moody and myself talking about politics. And the reason for that is to demonstrate for all of you. Some of you are upset. Why are you even platforming someone like that? I hear the criticism, but we have to confront these ideas directly. And then also we have to demonstrate to people that so many of the folks we're arguing against have literally never heard some of the facts that serve as premises for our broader ideology, right? It's crazy. I brought up during the last episode of The Grudge to Isabella Moody the fact that what Trump's saying there about how it's red states that have crime under control and blue states and blue governors that everything has gone crazy under. Opposite. Just factually, the data says opposite. The top crime states are disproportionately red states. The homicide rate, the average homicide rate in red states is far higher than the average homicide rate in blue states. And Isabella's reaction, the MAGA person who co-hosts the show, is just, well, no, that's not true. That's not what I hear. That's not what I feel, right? So often that's the contradiction. There's a feeling about, no, I've heard it's the blue states that are more dangerous, when the data just, it doesn't point to that. And I think that's one of the reasons a show like this is important, is to show why it is that people believe what they believe, even the most extreme folks, which is so often because they're just in a propaganda bubble. And that can happen on the left wing as well, for sure. It's particularly severe right now within the MAGA media bubble. But then Trump there saying that we're going to be more proud than ever, more successful than ever. I think there's a pretty good chance he'll follow through on his tariff plan. And if he does, we're going to see a lot of economic harm, unfortunately. It's heartbreaking, but it is what people voted for when Trump promised to do it. And so that's one option. And he'll spin the numbers and pretend like everything's great. But the other option is this is all just a bluff, and he knows the damage it would do, and he's just throwing these numbers out to leverage in negotiations. And if he doesn't follow through because he doesn't actually believe the stuff he's saying about tariffs, these broad tariffs again, we've talked about how obviously strategically implemented, more narrowly implemented tariffs can serve purposes fine. But the way Trump's doing it, so broad, so childlike, just slap it on everything and see what happens. If he doesn't actually believe that that's a good approach to our economic situation, then maybe he doesn't actually do it on day one. He pretends like he got all the concessions he needed when he didn't. And then he'll just take credit for all the Biden accomplishments, which is what a lot of people are, we're going to talk about on the bonus show, a lot of people are setting themselves up to do that. Fox News, or Fox Business specifically, would always give news about good jobs report. And we got another good jobs report. And they would always find a way to make it negative. Oh, sure, this is good technically, but it's not because of Biden, because and now they're going, oh, wow, this is just a good jobs report, setting people's minds up who watch Fox News to think the economy is actually doing pretty well, so that the second Trump comes in, he can take credit for all of the recovery efforts that happened under his predecessor that were so difficult to deal with because of how badly Trump was mismanaging that situation when he handed it to Biden-Harris. So two options. One, he actually does the stuff that he said he wants to do, and it's terrible economically, and he pretends like it's great. Number two, he just doesn't do any of the stuff he's promised, takes credit for all the stuff Biden-Harris worked on for the years after what he left them in shambles, and pretends like that's how he created the best situation ever. Almost like he did after Obama oversaw the recovery from the Great Recession. Oh my gosh, it's a pattern. Then you have this.
In the history of our country, we were doing so good. Our border was the lowest numbers ever, the lowest number of illegal immigrants coming into our border that we ever had. The famous chart. Do you remember the chart that I looked over to the right? Ooh. I have that. I still have that throbbing feeling. That beautiful chart that I looked over. Well, that chart showed we had the best immigration, the lowest number of people in the history of our country recorded. In the history of our country, that's what we achieved. And we're going to achieve it again, and very fast. It's going to be very fast because we have no...
And of course, the chart that he's referring to misconstrued the numbers so that you didn't realize as Trump was leaving office, there was a spike. So the final months of his administration, once the pandemic wasn't suppressing numbers so much, there was this huge unprecedented spike that then, of course, carried over into Biden-Harris that he never wants to engage with, and the big unprecedented drop that isn't the lowest in history, but he says it is, but also it was really low, was obviously because of a pandemic freeze on migration. But sure, make that a huge accomplishment. And remember, something I should have brought up way more before the election, but it wasn't on the top of my head. If you look at violent criminals who happen to be undocumented immigrants under the Trump administration versus Biden administration, the Trump administration actually released more into the country. Oh no, they'll never believe it because data, ew. Terrifying stuff that, number one, Trump's saying it's just the beginning, his tariff plan. He wants to change the structure of our elections. I wonder if he would change them to help or hurt Republicans in the future in frightening ways. And then the second big terrifying element of this is just how much the crowd eats it up. Their hearts melt for Donnie, no matter how fact-free his speeches are. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Click the join button below if you want to get the daily bonus show. It's such a great time. Join us there.